Next on Currents News, the Pope makes history in the land where Islam rules. His mission could affect lives for generations. In 2 hours, President Trump will report on the state of our union, what he says could affect lives as well. Cardinal Dolan makes a painful decision that's impacting students in the New York Archdiocese. Plus, on this Lunar New Year's Day, we'll look at how Chinese American Catholics are making a big difference in the Brooklyn Diocese. The news starts right now. Pope Francis celebrating a big outdoor mass in Abu Dhabi, concluding his historic visit with Muslim leaders in the United Arab Emirates. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The Pope is back at the Vatican tonight. His groundbreaking trip to the Arabian Peninsula was brief, but the impact could last for generations. Currents News' Emily Drewby is here with the story. Emily.
Liz, the Pope's 3-day whirlwind visit ending today with what many are considering to be the biggest showing of public Christian worship ever on the peninsula.
A moment that will go down in history.
Peace with you.
Pope Francis celebrating Holy Mass for an estimated 180,000 people, the first ever papal Mass on the Arabian Peninsula. A majority of the Catholics living in the United Arab Emirates are migrants, especially Filipino and Indian workers, who came to the country because of its rapid economic expansion. The Holy Father's homily included a nod to those migrants.
Per voi non è certo facile.
It is most certainly not easy for you to live far from home, missing the affection of your loved ones and perhaps also feeling uncertainty about the future. But the Lord is faithful and does not abandon his people.
The Pope also saying that if you are with Jesus and you try to live out his word, then you are blessed, calling blessedness a present reality, not a future state. Also calling the Beatitudes a roadmap for life.
Non domandano azioni sovraumane.
They do not require superhuman actions, but rather the imitation of Jesus in our everyday life. They invite us to keep our hearts pure, to practice meekness and justice despite everything, to be merciful to all, to live affliction in union with God. This is the holiness of daily life, one that has no need of miracles or of extraordinary signs.
Keeping in line with the visit's theme of interreligious dialogue and connection, about 4,000 Muslim people were in attendance. Earlier in the day, Pope Francis visited St. Joseph's Cathedral, the first Catholic church to open in Abu Dhabi, taking time to bless parishioners. Following the historic Mass, Pope Francis wrapped up his whirlwind apostolic visit, boarding his plane for Rome.
Pope Francis will be back in the Middle East at the end of March for a short trip to Morocco when he will visit the cities of Rabat and Casablanca. Liz?
Emily, today's Mass was a major step for Catholics in the UAE. I'm sure you know that. While on the flight back home, did Pope Francis continue the entire religious freedom conversation?
Liz, he did tell those that were on the plane with him that today's event was a big step in the process of obtaining religious freedom in the country, but that it's going to be an ongoing process.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. The Holy Father has made history with his mission to the United Arab Emirates as the first ever Pope to go there. So what are the possible fruits of this journey? To dig into that question, we're joined by Crux Editor-in-Chief John Allen. John, always good to talk to you.
Hi, Liz.
How are you, John? We just heard from our reporter, Emily Drewby, who talked about this historic beautiful Mass in Abu Dhabi. The UAE is celebrating their year of tolerance, and part of that is hosting Pope Francis for his outreach to the Islamic world. All that said, what will be the lasting implications of the Holy Father coming together with Muslim leaders?
Well, Liz, I mean, this is a classic journalistic dodge, but I will employ it anyway. The answer is it's too early to tell.
Right.
Obviously, as you say, the point here was to celebrate tolerance and peace and dialogue among the followers of various faiths, in this case, principally Christians and Muslims. And Francis did that to a T. He, of course, signed a joint declaration with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar Mosque and University in Egypt, which is widely considered the Vatican of the Sunni Muslim world. The Sunnis are about 80% of the world's Muslim population. All of that is to the good, but whether that is going to change concrete situations on the ground remains to be seen. You know, you mentioned the beauty of the papal liturgy today in Abu Dhabi, and it really was remarkable. But let's remember there's a huge irony built into that, which is that this was the first ever public Christian liturgy in the UAE. Generally speaking, non-Muslim forms of religious expression are banned in public in the UAE. Religious diversity is tolerated as long as it's kept private, but you're not allowed to wear it on your sleeve. The question will be whether going forward all of that is going to loosen up, where Christians have a little bit more breathing space, a little bit more opportunity to be loud and proud on a public basis.
And of course, the Pope, not one to sit still for too long, will be traveling to Morocco in late March. That's going to mark another step forward in his mission for interreligious dialogue. What can we expect from that trip? Does the document on human fraternity create like a great foundation for that?
The top note of that trip will be the Pope extending his outreach to the Islamic world, but I would expect another twist there as well, Liz. Remember, Morocco is where the United Nations compacts on global migration were recently signed. That's an effort that the Pope had enthusiastically supported, and some people actually expected him to go to Morocco for the signing ceremony. So I also suspect that the Pope will use that trip as an opportunity to carry his argument for interreligious dialogue one step further and say that in addition to being talking to each other, and in addition to being friends with one another, we also need to come together to work together to pool our efforts on behalf of those shared moral, social, political, humanitarian objectives that Francis regards as so compelling, so critical in the early 21st century, with the care of migrants and refugees obviously being very near the top of his personal list.
Did this trip measure up to your expectations, John?
Well, look, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, they're great hosts. The choreography of this trip was just absolutely fantastic. You know, here in Rome, I was watching the feed of the Mass this morning, and I watched the papal motorcade as it made its way to that downtown stadium where the liturgy took place. And you had military planes flying overhead, spewing the white and yellow of the papal flag. I mean, it was like out of a Fellini film, you know? And we have seen carefully choreographed and high-spirited papal trips before. Whether this amounts to a real sort of turning of the page in terms of an Islamic society genuinely trying to make space for its religious minorities, that's the $64,000 question. And unfortunately, we don't have an answer to it today, Liz.
All right, John, thank you so much for the perspective you did provide. Like I said before, always great talking to you, sir.
A pleasure.
More now on the Pope's in-flight press conference. He addressed several other topics on the way home to the Vatican. He was asked about a series of articles in the Vatican's women's magazine regarding the sexual abuse of nuns by priests, saying, quote, "Mistreatment of women is a problem. Women are treated as second class. We're working on this. Some priests have been removed because of this." Francis also discussed a letter sent to him from Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro asking the Pope to mediate the country's political crisis. The Pope said he hadn't read the letter yet, then added, "We'll see what can be done, but for there to be a mediation, the will of both sides is needed." Bad news tonight about a Catholic education. 7 elementary schools throughout the New York Archdiocese will be closing at the end of the academic year. The Archdiocese made the announcement today, saying they tried to maintain the operational and financial viability of the schools, but they were underutilized and often in need of significant improvements. The schools being closed are St. Rose of Lima and St. Bridget in Manhattan, Our Lady Health of Christians in Staten Island, St. Nicholas of Tolentine and St. Joseph in the Bronx, St. Mary in Wappingers Falls, and St. Peter's Regional School in Sullivan County. In a video, Cardinal Timothy Dolan talked about the painful decision.
We had to make the painful announcement that 7 of our beloved Catholic schools are not going to reopen next fall. You know, I'd rather be opening some new ones instead of closing some of the gems that we got, but reality sets in.
The Cardinal pledged that all affected families will be welcomed into neighboring Catholic schools. He said financial aid and scholarships will be available. President Trump will be speaking to the nation less than 2 hours from now as he delivers his second State of the Union. This one was delayed, and this time he's facing a very different audience. Karen Kafa has a look at what to expect.
Even as the president refuses to yield in his demand for border wall funding, the White House says tonight's State of the Union speech will be a message of unity.
Let's come together. Let's do what all of America wants from us.
President Trump's address comes on the heels of the longest government shutdown in U.S. history, and as a bipartisan group of congressional negotiators tries to craft a bill to avert another. Speaker Pelosi insisting
there's not going to be any wall money in the legislation.
President Trump publicly speculating he may declare a national emergency to get it.
I don't want to say, but you'll hear the State of the Union, and then you'll see what happens right after the State of the Union, okay?
The president has faced recent pushback within his own party on the idea of declaring a national emergency rather than accepting the congressional plan.
I'm for whatever works, which means avoiding a shutdown and avoiding the president feeling he should declare a national emergency.
And on the foreign policy front, last week, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spearheaded a rebuke of Trump's plans to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria and Afghanistan.
The motion is agreed to.
Tonight, Trump is expected to address his plans for ending various conflicts abroad. Also, the turbulent situation in Venezuela and trade with China. He's also teased a possible announcement of a date for a follow-up summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. On Capitol Hill, Karen Kafa, Currents News.
A major issue where the president has often spoken out about is abortion. Tonight, Catholics will be watching to see if the pro-life president talks about any of several abortion developments, including New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo signing into law a bill that's being described as extreme. It allows abortions even in the 9th month of pregnancy. Virginia has put a hold on a proposal that would permit abortion after the baby is born. Embattled Governor Ralph Northam strongly supports the measure. In North Dakota, the House has passed a bill that bans a common type of abortion, outlawing dilation and evacuation procedures. And the U.S. Supreme Court issued a temporary halt to a new Louisiana law that restricts abortion providers. The justices need until Thursday to study the case further. Democrats in the U.S. Senate rejected an effort to ensure that babies who survive abortion attempts receive medical care. Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska tried to fast-track the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act after Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam voiced support for the abortion of babies even after birth. Senate Democrats stopped the move on Monday. A similar measure has already cleared the U.S. House. More now on the crisis in Venezuela and the church. We are learning tonight about a meeting Venezuela's bishops held with self-declared President Juan Guaido. According to Guaido, the session was held to mobilize efforts to bring humanitarian aid to the long-suffering Venezuelan people. The top 2 bishops in the country attended. The meeting occurred on Friday before Nicolas Maduro sent his letter to Pope Francis asking for help in mediating the political stalemate. There's a lot more news headed your way. A look at the growing impact of Chinese American Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese. For them, today is New Year's Day. How a Catholic bishop coped when he returned home after the worst flooding in a century hit Australia. And they've been away from home for a very long time. Now Syrians are returning to find what ISIS had done. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. This is New Year's Day for Chinese Americans. The Year of the Pig marks a new beginning. For many, the day is not only for celebration, but also for prayer. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports on the growing number of Chinese American Catholics who are making a big difference in the life of the church.
Thousands gather in Manhattan's Chinatown to spread good spirits and to start out the new year with a bang. Firecrackers popping. Hundreds of thousands of them as part of the joyful occasion.
Everybody celebration, everybody eats, everybody happy.
Also celebrating Catholics at Chinatown's Transfiguration Church, praying in Mandarin, asking for a blessed New Year.
Pray to God to give us a good beginning. So for the rest of the year, we will live the gospel.
In the Brooklyn Diocese, Chinese Catholics make up at least 10% of those newly baptized into the faith each year. At the most recent Easter Vigil, 350 Chinese Americans received the sacraments, divided among 4 different parishes of the diocese: St. Michael's and St. John Vianney in Queens, and St. Agatha plus Our Lady of Perpetual Help churches in Brooklyn. The growth of Catholics matches an overall increase in the Chinese American population in New York. The Chinese community celebrating the Year of the Pig, part of the 12-year cycle calendar. The pig symbolizes good fortune and wealth, an annual New Year's tradition, passing out red envelopes.
You put money in there, a little bit of money, sometimes you put candy in there. It's basically good luck.
But more important than receiving cash, prayer.
I'm praying for peace in the world, and that's what we need.
Keeping those intentions close to their hearts as they sing, dance, and celebrate. And the Chinese New Year festivities will continue with a parade here in Chinatown on Sunday, February 17th, beginning at 1 p.m. In Chinatown, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Sister Monica Gan is an expert on the Catholic faith among Chinese Americans. She's a pastoral associate at St. John Vianney Church in Flushing, Queens, and she joins us now. Sister, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
As you know, the church in China is divided. One church following the Chinese government, the other following the Pope. How has that affected the faith among the Chinese people?
Most of them feel that it's confused, and also depends on the locations.
Sure.
Yeah, some people from like Hebei, the province of Hebei, they have better situation. But the people from like Xinjiang or the Shanxi, it's very difficult situation.
I'm
there.
really happy to say that the number of Chinese faithful in the Brooklyn Diocese is surging, and it's strong. How do they welcome newcomers? Is it easy for them to assimilate into the culture when they come here because the faith is so strong?
It's difficult for them, but that's why we tried our best to help them to feel comfortable when they come. I know many of them come not from the beginning, not looking for the faith, they're looking for the help. But from my understanding, I think whatever reason you come here is the way God lead you to Him.
Are you optimistic about the faith? I mean, I know you can't have faith and fear at the same time, obviously, but what do you hope to see for the growth of the Chinese community, the faithful here, especially in the diocese? What do you want?
I'm very positive.
Okay.
Yes, every year many Chinese people come to the church, and I can see year by year their change. When they just come, they feel so sad, hopeless, and helpless. But after our help, after they getting to know God, the smile come to their face.
Right.
We can see the change from their inside.
What does the New Year do for the Catholics? Again, it's a time of celebration and renewal. Do you see that affect them, especially with regard to the faith?
Yes. As a Chinese Catholics, the church is like a big family for them. And we need to provide the comfort and the warmth and happiness to them. So the Chinese New Year is the most important the holiday for the Chinese. That's why we make this holiday is a big deal. We do the big celebration.
What are your plans, sister?
We are going to have some entertainment by our parishioners, and especially our catechumens are going to perform songs. And also we have the line dance, and we have the ceremony of honoring the ancestors. That's a very big ceremony.
Okay, well, I will expect that you will let us know when all of this is happening, because we would love to cover it. It has been such a pleasure talking with you, sister.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much, learning so much about the community. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A Catholic bishop is recovering tonight after record rains flooded into his Australian home. Bishop Tim Harris was forced to flee as the waters came through both his front and back doors. When he returned to the damage, he shared his thoughts online.
I'm very conscious that so many people in the city are going through the things that I'm going through at the moment, and at least we've got our lives, you know, and all this needs to be put in perspective.
About 500 homes and businesses near the coast were also flooded. Officials are calling it a once-in-a-century flood. Man-made destruction is greeting Syrian refugees who are going back home after fleeing the horrors of ISIS terror. When they arrive, there's no guarantee their basic needs will even be met. Ben Wiedemann reports.
This is not the happiest of homecomings. The town of Hajin near the Euphrates River in eastern Syria was the scene of intense coalition bombing, followed by house-to-house combat between ISIS and U.S.-backed, predominantly Kurdish forces. It's a repetition of the same scenario that has played out from Mosul to Raqqa, and now here, ISIS's last stand. To save towns and cities from the extremists, they must be destroyed. Zahra returned with her family 2 days ago and sells snacks to make some money. Only stones are left, she tells me. Some of the residents of this town, which was liberated from ISIS in December, have begun to return. But to return to what? Most of the buildings are either severely damaged or utterly destroyed. So the best they can do at this point is just retrieve their belongings and then leave again. Qais returned last week to find his house in ruins and no way to support a family here. There is no sign that any government or other authority has begun to clear the rubble and restore a semblance of normal life. We want to make Hajin like it was in the days of the regime, says Saad. There was a hospital and the roundabout and those buildings, all destroyed because of ISIS. Ben Wiedemann, Hajin, Eastern Syria.
Still to come on Currents News, find out all about the first ever all-girls Boy Scout troop. And the Super Bowl champs return home, the New England Patriots celebrating in the streets of Boston. We'll be right back. The Boy Scouts of America has started welcoming girls. In the nation's capital, about 200 young ladies are being organized into 30 separate troops, all within the Boy Scouts. The girls took their scout pledges on Saturday. The new Scouts are part of a rebranding move done in response to dwindling Boy Scout membership, sex abuse scandals, and criticism from the Girl Scouts. Thousands of girls have entered the Boy Scout program since Friday. The city of Boston staged a massive celebration today for their Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. They're still celebrating after the New England Patriots brought home their 6th Super Bowl win. The team took home its 6th Lombardi Trophy on Sunday. Today, the Patriots were honored with a duck boat parade in downtown Boston. Over 1 million fans packed the 2-mile-long parade route, some even taking their spots well before sunrise. The Patriots beat the Los Angeles Rams 13-3. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you so much for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. I hope to see you again next time.